Hello and welcome to my tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to download and use 3D Ripper DX to capture a 3D file from a game and import it into Cinema 4D, a 3D program. Now I'm using Cinema 4D Studio, but I believe this same technique is going to work for anybody who's using most 3D programs. Cinema 4D Prime, Studio, Broadcast, each one. 3ds Max would actually probably work even better. Maya, each one would probably work for the same scenario. Only difference is this 3D Ripper was actually originally designed for 3ds Max, but it is also compatible with most 3D software. So to begin, you're going to want to go to this website right here, which I'm going to put a link in for you to click on. And you're going to want to click right here on 1.8.2 download, or the current version, whichever that one may be. Now your security software is probably going to be a little nervous about that and pop something up when you try and download from here. So I can't guarantee it's going to be bug free, so I recommend, because this is kind of like that, when I downloaded it, it was safe, but I recommend downloading it to maybe another computer that's on its last leg, so just to be a little safe, because you never know if anything gets stuck in. But once you click download, you're going to go to your downloads page right here. I'm running Windows 8.1. You're going to click that, and you're going to want to go to this file right here, which is the download. You're just going to double click that. You're going to say yes, and you're just going to go through the install process. Just put it to any old spot. And yes, I'm going to exit now because I don't want to do that because I already have it on my system. But once we have that, now we can close out of this page. Once we have that down, I have a desktop icon. So what we're going to do is you're going to double click it to launch it. Now this is going to open up all these files. Now what you're going to have to do is you're going to need to navigate to the launch file of your game. So where you're going to do that is you're going to have this spot right up here. You're going to click on this little file here, and that's going to bring you to your game's data bin. So essentially what you're going to look for is you're going to go to libraries. Well, I'm sorry, not libraries. You're going to click this PC. Then you're going to go down through here, which that's actually not the thing. Oh, yep, here it is. You're going to go to this PC. You're going to go down to local disk, where your game is stored, whichever hard drive that may be on. And now you're going to go to Program Files 86, and you're going to scroll through till you find that game. And you're going to find the game, and I double-clicked it, and it was Guild Wars. And once I found it, there's the Guild Wars 2 right here. It's the one with the logo, and you're going to click that, and then click OK. And that's what 3D Ripper is going to launch through. So now that we have that set up, we're going to go through here. We need to have our capture key set to the correct one. Mine for now is going to be set to F10, but it could be whichever key you'd like that to be. Next, you're going to have your frames, what your frame output's going to be onto. So mine is eUser documents, or it could be whichever one yours is set to. The only thing to note is that under documents and 3D Ripper textures and shaders is pretty much pointless unless you have 3ds Max, because you cannot import any of the textures from your 3D capture unless you have 3ds Max, because that's what this was originally built for. There is some other ones that are more compatible with other software, but this is the only one I found that works for me on Guild Wars. So what I'd recommend now is, after you have all this stuff set up, you have this set, you have your launch program, you're going to want to go through this checklist and capture all shaders, all textures, force windowed mode, and then make sure, this is very important, to also capture to waveform OBJ. This is going to be the file that we're going to be importing into actual use. So make sure this one, out of all of them, is checked. This one here is very important. So after we have all that set up, we're going to click launch, and it's going to launch the game. It's going to take a little bit. You're going to have to log in if this is Guild Wars 2. Then you're going to click play. And that's going to launch the game in this kind of weird window thing. It's going to run kind of weird, and there's going to be some glitches, but that's part you're just going to have to bear with, because it's a little unstable, but it does get the job done. So now that we're in this window, we have to figure out what we're going to actually capture. Now the way this works is we've injected the 3D Ripper into the program. So what it's doing is when I press the F10 key, it's going to capture a frame like FPS. So up here I'm running at 62 FPS, 60 or 63 now, 63 frames per second. And what that means is every second there's a frame pulsed out by the camera or rather received by the camera, of the information that's been generated. So what we're actually doing is we're taking 3D Ripper, and it's kind of like grabbing a net and grabbing one of those frames that are being pulsed out by the data. So whatever position my character is in for whatever frame that is we're on when I press F10 is going to be the one that is actually captured. So whatever pose that's in, we're just like kind of grabbing everything. Now this does have some problems when we actually capture it, but we'll go over that after we get to that step. But what this essentially means is when I press this button, everything that is being generated by the camera is going to be captured. We're not capturing just our character. So the best thing I recommend for the easiest way to do it is to capture your character at the home menu. Now if you're trying to capture another character for your friend and you're not able to get on their account, you have to actually load into a map, you can do that. Just be aware that is going to take a longer time to capture, and it's going to take a ton of time to import that in, and then there's going to be a ton of stuff you have to sort through to kind of clear out. So just to make that as an example, I'm actually going to log in and do it the harder way, just to give you an example of how to go through the worst case scenario. We're just going to log in here. It takes a little bit of time. The game is going to run slower. So I'm actually going to go to a map. I'm probably going to hop to the jQuery Borderlands just because that's the one I'm most familiar with. It's just a different map in Guild Wars 2. And here we are. And you're going to want to try and find a pose for your character that you like. It's a good position for him. So for me, I really like him kind of standing like this. Make sure his feet are flat depending on where you want to put him. And see, characters tend to do this like movement every now and again, so you're going to want to try and get them to stop doing that if that's something that you like, or if you don't like. So after he's in the right position, all I'm going to do is I'm going to press the F10 key right now, which is my capture key. And it's a little glitched up, so that's actually turning on the screen kind of analysis. So I think it's actually my F11 key, so I'm going to give that a try. Here we go, we're going to push it. There we go, it's doing the capture right now. You can see that the game's frozen up. You have this little command frame pop up. This may take up to 6 minutes, but it didn't. It's actually gone through. So now that the capture process is finished. So at this point, it's okay if we close out of the game because we did the capture. One other thing to note, which I forgot to mention in the beginning, as long as you see ready to capture, the program is working. Now there is sometimes I've had where I launched the game and it didn't come up. This just means you need to reboot your system after install most likely to get it fully refreshed and then try launching the game, and that should fix it. So now I'm just going to exit to the desktop. One thing to note too on most games is I'm going to click exit to desktop, but it'll actually off-put your mouse. So if you're trying to click, say, here, you're actually clicking down here. So you're just going to have to kind of fumble around, I guess I'd say, till you find the right spot. But now that we've done our capture, now we have to find out where it is. Now the glitch I found with 3D Ripper is it never puts it where you suggest to stick it. It puts it at the same place always, continuously, and that's going to be on your local disk, and it's going to be on this little 2. I don't know why it does it, but that's for some reason where it puts it. So you're going to double click on that, and then you're going to be bombarded by this sloth of data that is all over here, all these different pictures. And this is essentially every bit of data that is used to make up the game. So when I was standing on that map, this is all the data that it used to make the textures and all that stuff. So the textures were captured, but when I import my OBJ, the textures are not going to come in. And I guess if you want to spend a ton of time, you could go through by hand, and that's a file format I can't open up. But you could go through by hand and paste these textures on, which is a very painstaking process that I wouldn't really recommend doing. But you could, and it is very worthwhile in the end. It just depends how dedicated you are to getting that perfect capture out. But anyway, to actually import this in, we're going to double click on the 2 now. And now we have these 3 files. This is the frame for the 3ds Max, and this is the one that would actually import the textures and everything. This is, if you did have 3ds Max, would make it a lot easier, but this tutorial is explaining if you have Cinema 4D, because I've never actually learned 3ds Max, and I just feel more comfortable in the Cinema 4D as my 3D program. So this OBJ is the file we're going to use. Now we're not going to double click this yet. See, if you double click it and you have any other program on your computer, it's going to open that first. It tends not to open Cinema 4D. So what we're going to do is we're going to open Cinema 4D now. I'm just going to click your icon or go to your selection menu or however you like to launch it. So I'm just going to click that there. It's going to bring this up. Now we're inside our 3D Cinema 4D program. So now we're going to do File, Open. Now I'm going to relocate that file. I'm going to go to my local disk, number 2, then the 2 folder again, and then OBJ, and then we're going to click Open. I'm going to click on that once, and I'm going to click Open. And then it's going to ask me scale parameters. We're going to leave this like this because it's going to be pretty messy when we get in. I'm going to click OK. And now this is where we just have to wait like a good while. It's probably going to be maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, or actually, I'm completely wrong. Normally it takes longer than that. But that loaded in much easier. So now that the file's in, you're probably wondering, where is my my capture? I don't see it. All I have is this kind of blank screen. There's really nothing going on. There's a little bit of a floor, but that's about it. Well, up here on the far right corner, if you notice, there's a whole bunch of like files sitting here. And these files are all the objects that are in the scene right now. All these little things here. But we can't see them on screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to select them all. Go to the top, click once, and then we're going to scroll down to the very bottom, hold down Shift, and then click on the bottom. And then I'll select all our objects. We have 725 different elements. So now what I'm going to do is going to press the H key, and that's going to kind of frame everything up. Notice we still can't see anything though. That's because our objects are so big, or so spread out, I should say, that they're unable to be seen by our renderer because the viewing distance is clipping off. This is how your computer kind of regulates the data flow. So to fix this, we're going to go to File, or I'm sorry, we're going to go to Edit, and then we're going to go to Project Settings. And once we're there, we're going to go over to, we're actually going to stay under Project Settings. Sorry, I'm a little mixed up there. Stay there, and then we're going to go all the way down to View Clipping, and we're going to change this from medium to huge. Now instantly, our clipping distance has been increased, so we're not cutting out anymore, and we can see this big block sitting in the world. And this is actually the sky that would encompass our environment. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click once, and then we're going to click again, and we're just going to keep deleting. So we're going to click, delete, click, delete, click, delete. We're going to keep deleting until all this is gone. Now all that's gone, you can see a little speck here. So we're going to zoom in on that. I'm just holding down the left Alt and then holding down the right click, and pulling my mouse over to zoom in. Now we have all these like little plane things, and this is more of the environment around the game. This is what they paste the textures onto to let the game actually exist, what they put on it. So if they want to make clouds and stuff, they'll paste their clouds on here with alpha channels, so you can see through the clouds to the blue sky, which would be the other environment we just deleted. So I'm going to keep clicking that. And these little flat planes here are other like little environment things that they would paste things onto. We're just going to keep clicking and deleting. It takes a little time. Click on this little sphere thing here. And now we can start to make out somewhat of a mountainous landscape. Now when you do the 3D capture, it's from that camera's particular perspective. So it does get warped very easily. But as we're looking through, we're starting to kind of find where we're at. Now this just varies from map to map, and I've actually done this scan a few times, so I'm getting more familiar with where my character is and all this clutter. But it does take some time, so you're just going to have to go through very carefully, just kind of zoom in, kind of say, okay, I'm going to delete this here, I'm going to delete that, and just kind of look around. Nope, he's not there. We're going to kind of click and delete, we're going to delete. Keep sifting through all the pieces. And the big time saver is whatever piece has the most detail is where your character is. So right down here, this seems like a spot. And if we zoom in, we can see, yep, there he is. And we're noticing when I try and zoom in to see where he's at, he's kind of disappearing. He's like clipping. And that's because we have our clipping distance set for huge. So now that we're actually this close and we found out where they're at, we're going to go back to Edit, Project Settings, and then we're going to go back down and change our view clipping to actually small or medium. And now we're able to really zoom back in, and he won't disappear anymore. So there he is. There's my character. So what we're going to do to save a bunch of time is, since he's the only one I want, I could save my little miniature down here, but I'm not going to do that for this part of the tutorial. So what I'm going to do to make this really easy, instead of going through by hand dumping all this stuff trying to make sure he's still there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete the floor and just some of the stuff around him, just like that, just to make him really easy to see. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all my objects. I'm going to do Control A to select everything. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little selector, live selection tool, and I'm going to say only select visible elements to off. That means when I go to drag and select, it's going to go anything that's right through this distance. So like I'll select the hammer and all the way through him to his other shoulder. If I would have only select visible elements on, then when I go to select, it's only selecting what I can see, so it won't select through things. So I'm going to undo that selection by doing Control Z, re-clicked on my live selection tool and turn that to off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Control key and I'm going to drag over my character to deselect him. So I'm going to deselect all of them to make sure he's not selected at all. And I'm going to change my view to about this big and hold down the middle mouse button and drag to get a pretty big selection. And then while holding down Control, just kind of keep dragging, kind of painting over top of him to make sure all his elements are deselected. So we're going to keep doing that. And now that all that's done, that means I have everything selected except for him. So what I'm going to do now is press the Delete key, and everything else is gone except for him. So now what I'm going to do to make sure everything ported through like I was hoping, because sometimes there's a bunch of little things down below you can't see that we'd like to get rid of, but we didn't know we had selected. I'm going to reselect my character and then scroll through the list, and it looks like everything on there is lit up. That means the only thing exists in my scene is him. Now you may notice my character looks pretty kind of smushed. He looks a little flattened. He just doesn't look right, and that's part of the glitches that happens during transfer. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to need to fix them up. So the first thing we're going to do is take all these tiny little objects that make him up, all these separate little things. See, like I could grab one, pull it off, there's his head right there, and there's actual multiple copies of his head, which is another glitch that is just kind of how they build the game, which is very interesting. It's just kind of how it was imported over. So I'm going to undo that with Control Z, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on the top, we're going to scroll down to the bottom and hold down the Shift key. And then we're going to do is we're going to right click on all these objects and we're going to do Connect Objects plus Delete. And when we do that, that creates one solid object that my character is made out of. So it's much easier to move that around and like pull them different places and stuff. Much easier to work with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take all these textures and stuff that what made him up in these selection tags. We're just going to drag over with a left mouse click and kind of drag out. I'm going to right click, Control Z to undo that. And now I have them all selected. I'm going to press the Delete key, and that is going to delete. Whoops, let's see what we did. Delete key. Yep, we're just going to keep scrolling, selecting, and deleting these little selections here. Just do that there. Click him, click him. Now that they're all gone. So all these textures we have now down in our texture panel, I'm just going to right click and remove unused materials. And that's going to get rid of them all. That's an easy way to get rid of all this. So this is like cleaning up the mess, really. Now we have him more just himself, no textures, the plain object of our character. Let's see what we can do to kind of fix him up. So the first thing we need to do is his actual center point is pretty off, and this is pretty common. His like selection point is like pretty far in front of him, which just makes it kind of hard to move him around. I would really like to be able to grab right where he's at. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo to put him back to where he was, and we're going to click on this little thing right here called the Enable Axis. And what this does is this enables us to move his axis point around wherever we'd like. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of position it like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to press the middle mouse button once. Just tap it. It's going to open our four-way view. So then we're going to move over to this one right down here, the right side view, and we're going to middle mouse click again to increase that size. So now we're going to move around the screen and kind of zoom in where he's at. And a great way to get to the perfect zoom is just tapping the O key to center the character in the screen. So we're going to take this little side here, and what this does is it puts us in an orthographic right side view in like a little mesh, so we can kind of see easily where in position he is. We're just going to position that kind of like right there. Then we're going to middle mouse click again, and we're going to go to the top view. Middle mouse click, open. I'm going to press the O key, and now we're zoomed in on where he's at from above. On the top view, we're going to take his access point, and we're going to pull it about right here. Now they're at the top view. And I'm just going to hold down the left Alt and the middle mouse button and just pull around to move the screen. Then I'm going to right click to drag in and out, and I'm just going to kind of change that position to be about right there. So now we're going to middle click again, and we're going to go to the front view. We're going to click on that, and now we're going to press the O key one more time. Now it's going to zoom us into the front view. So I'm going to left alt click, right to drag, and just reposition that until it's in about is like the center of your character, the best spot you can kind of find to put that. Now we're going to middle mouse click again, and middle mouse click again over here, and now we have, as we scroll around him with the holding down the left alt and moving the left and holding down the left mouse button to kind of just pull and drag him around, we can see that that is perfectly centered inside of him more or less. So now what we can do is we're going to click on the enable axis, and this locks it in place so we can pull him around and he'll stick to it. So now what we'd like to do is we'd like to have him in the center of our world, and that's right here. This is always the center, right where this little kind of blue lines and the red lines and the green lines, the X, Y, and Z are all coming into the center of that. So that's a great place to have him at, instead of down there where his head's kind of like through the floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our character, and then we're going to click coordinates. And what we're going to do is we're going to go right here, and we're going to zero these out. These are the positions X, Y, and Z. So what we're going to do is we're going to press 0 once. We have a 0. I'm going to press tab, and we're going to go down one level, and we're going to press 0 again, tab, 0. And then we're going to hit enter on that last one, and he'll pop right to the middle. This is his global position we just punched in. So now that we have that, now it's time to kind of fix him up and make him look less mushed. So what we're going to do to his global scale, I found is the easiest way. I'm not really going to mess around with kind of like the scale tool. What I'm going to do is affect his global scale, which seems to work better. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that, and we're going to just tap the arrow key up. And what we're doing is we're global X scale, which is along the red line. So by clicking this, it's making him wider along the red line, So by clicking this, we're going wider X. So that means we're going above 1 to 1.5, which seems like a good number right now. And that seems to have really stretched him out from 1. So I can go back and just type in a 1, hit enter. That's the old way. And the one that seemed the best is 1.5. We're going to hit enter, and that seems much better. Right now he seems a little squished along his Z axis, the blue line. So we're going to go to Z, and we're going to make that bigger. So I just keep going up by like tenths of a second, or number, margin. Just keep going, keep pushing that until it feels like the character looks right. And for me, it looks to be about 1.3. Now he's looking much better than he did before. He's looking much more in much better shape. So now that we have that, I'm going to try the Y, but that may not need anything at all. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good position he's at. I'm going to leave that at 1. And basically, this is pretty much how you pull your character out and you fix them up. This is the finished thing. Now you could go through and you could create a material. I have, just as an example, I could load a user preset. Let's put in something like car paint. Car paint's an interesting one. So we're just going to put a texture on them. And I'm just going to go up here, and this isn't part of the tutorial, but if you click up here, and this is if you have Studio, just hold down on this tab, go over to Physical Sky, and this just gives us a good environment, and we're just going to click the render button, and this will let us take a look at our character with his car paint texture. This gives it, the Physical Sky gives it something to reflect. And this is looking pretty nice, but this shows us a little bit of a problem that we're having with our character down there, like with his cape and stuff. And what we're going to do is, because he's looking pretty dark, he's not very easy to see, we're going to take our texture that we put on him, I'm just going to click up here, I'm going to press delete, and I'm going to click this little check mark to turn off the Physical Sky. And what this does is this kind of gives us an easier view to see what he looks like. And the problem is that there is a lot of kind of just like bumpy edges and stuff that just don't look so nice. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but in game my character actually has kind of like a tattered like cloak right here, or cape, that has a bunch of holes in it to look like it's worn, but none of that is actually transferred over. That's because in game development they can't afford that much resource to do high detail character models and clothing and stuff. So what they do is they'll actually make a solid mesh like this is here, and then the texture will have an alpha channel, so it'll look like there's holes through it when there really isn't. So that's like one of the tricks, but the 3D program only transferred the 3D information and not the textures. So for us, it looks like it's a solid piece, only the geometry made it over. So what we're going to have to do now is, that's okay with me if it doesn't have a hole in it. It still works out for kind of like what I'm wanting my character to be for. But you will notice, and I'm going to click on my character now, and then I'm going to go down to the Polygons tab, and this will show you the mesh that our character is made out of. This is all the little bit of polygons that make up his shape and how he is and stuff. So I'm going to click over here on the move tool just to get rid of that other thing so we can select just individual elements. And you can see we do have some clipping going on with just kind of how they built him. That means polygons are intersecting with other polygons. And this is causing some problems. Like right here is a perfect example of part of his shoulder sticking through another piece of his shoulder. And this is where you can go through and kind of fix up. So I'm just going to click on that and hold down the shift key and click on this one right here. And now I have a move tool and I have these polygons selected. So if I just click off anywhere, like right here on this little green thing, I can pull it in, I can push it out, and move them around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull this guy in right here, just push him in, and I'm going to grab this one here, hold down the shift key and grab that one there. I'm going to grab this little tab here, I'm going to pull that in, now click, click, I'm going to pull that in, click, click, and this is very messed up geometry. And right here is a perfect example of, see how this is blue? This is what they consider the normals of the geometry. So I'm just going to pull this out to have a better look at it. And what this is right here is the normal map. So a normal map is what side the geometry has that is the correct side. It has to be able to tell what's inside and what's outside. So when you have this character here in a 3D model, they're actually always hollow no matter what. So I'm just going to click here on this square to make an example. I'm just going to encompass my character around it because he's pretty small. But this square, for all visual rights, looks and appears to be a solid object. But for the program, for it to render that, that would be very intense. So what it does is it hollows it out right here like this. So on the inside, there's no interior. But it looks like it from the outside that it is solid. But what a normal map is, so I'm going to click on my cube and press C real quick. And this is kind of getting a little bit off topic, but I'm going to do Control A to select it all. And now you can see that there is all these little yellow things with kind of lines sticking out of them. Now you may not be seeing this depending on what you have your thing set up for options. So what I'm going to do is, if you don't have that selected, because I had to turn mine on, you're going to want to go to Options. And then you're going to want to scroll through this list until you find normal. So I'm going to click that to turn it off. And now my normals is turned off. I'm going to go through the options again and turn normals back on. And that way you can see the line. So now that we see those lines, we can see what our normals are. So anything yellow is the right side. So if I were to put a texture on this, this is the right side. This is how everything would match up and look properly. But if there was a normal was flipped, for example, say I'm just going to mess this up on purpose. I'm going to click on this object and rotate this piece around like that. And it's really messing everything up. You can see now that I have a blue normal. This means that this is incorrectly lined up. So if I'm going to do Control A, you can see that we're having some trouble here. That this is blue and yellow all here on the same side. So that's not good. That's going to cause a lot of problems and mix up with the textures. So what we're going to do to fix that on my model, I'm just going to delete the cube. What we're going to do to fix that on this guy here, and this is just comes the long tedious part, is we're going to click on the character, and we're going to see we have these little blue lines. So we're going to right click, and we're going to scroll through our list here. We're going to go all the way down to where it says, it's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is, reverse normals right here. And we're going to click that, and notice that our blue little segments, our polygons, have now turned to yellow. That means that their normals have been reversed and that the blue side, I'm going to go inside right here quick so we can see that the blue is now on the inside, and that's the correct way. So it's all kind of visually making the model fit how you'd like it to be. So that's part of the process, is fixing up his normals to make sure that he's matching like that. And I did a Control A so we can see the whole character. And now we see that there's actually a lot of problems. Like his hair through here is actually reversed. It should be the other way. This piece of hair, this part of his head, This shoulder actually came through nicely. This side's the proper side, but you'll notice, like with the geometry, that it's actually paper thin, and in most objects they're not. So to do a proper render for him to look correct, this is actually kind of difficult. This is messing up a lot of it. And a lot of people who do 3D extracts of their games don't usually print with this type of geometry. So if you were to extract your character from the game like we just did, at this point he could have a texture put on him. You could put him in a render to make some videos with him and stuff in the 3D program, but he is absolutely not suited for any kind of 3D printing at this point. He could be if we worked on him a little bit and had things set up, but at this point, this paper thin material right here is absolutely not how it would work in a 3D program. And as far as the program would actually read this file, it would consider it as a like this has no depth, because as far as the computer is concerned, this polygon has no depth. It's thinner than a piece of paper. It just doesn't exist. It's so tiny, like so thin. So the way we'd have to fix that is because a printer couldn't print anything this thin that has like no depth, because in the real world everything has depth. Even paper has a certain depth to it. So the way we'd have to fix this is we'd have to select these polygons, holding down the shift key and left clicking them till we have about all our little tiny little thin paper ones all selected. And it's a little tricky kind of getting in there, and I'm just going to leave it about like this, just an example. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and now we're going to right click, and we're going to do, and this is just a rough example, we're going to go to our extrude tool. We're going to left click that. Now that all my objects are selected and I have the extrude tool, I'm going to left click anywhere and just kind of pull. And when I pull to the right, it's going to extrude outward, but I'm going to pull to the left and I'm going to pull inward. And now, whoops, I kind of messed up. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to do Control Z to undo. I'm going to left click, drag to the left, just kind of fine tune it. Now that we have this selected, we're actually going to let go, and we're going to head over here, and under our selection panel, we have our attributes area. Now you might not be seeing this if this lock key is on. So if this little lock button's on, just make sure it's unclicked and then undo this selection and try again. And that's going to re-put these numbers in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that to not minus 0.06. We're going to set that to minus 0.0, maybe 3. And that gives us just a little bit of depth, just a little bit more of geometry to kind of look at here. And there's still a lot of stuff that could be fixed up. I mean, when these models get transferred over, they're usually pretty messy, to say the least. And you can spend hours and hours on them trying to tweak and get them fixed up. Like right here, his legs clipping through his armor, and that would need smoothed out. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can do to kind of repair that and to fix that. But all in all, it's a great kind of port over for like to do other things with. Now certain objects like this hammer, for example, actually came over pretty nicely. It did a pretty good job. Looking at it, all the normal maps are correct. These weapons seem to be less complicated, and they don't require any movement or animating. So these models tend to be much more specific. So if you wanted to go through and fix this hammer up for printing, you'd probably have better luck with that. But you'd have to go through and smooth these edges off and make them not so sharp, because printing machines, 3D printers, don't really like that kind of geometry either. But I've rattled on for a bit longer than this course's scope was really meant to be. But thank you for watching my tutorial, and I hope I helped you out if you had any problems. And if you have any questions, please just leave a comment underneath. And thanks again.